All right, hello and welcome to AWS Made Easy Ask Us Anything, episode number 56. Hey, Rahul, how are you doing? Uh, we
I
are.
forgot to unmute myself.
No worries.
We are live after a hiatus, but doing very well, Stephen. Thank you for asking, and happy 4th of July.
Oh, thank you. It's really exciting. I'm taking the rest of the day off. So after this one, we're gonna go have some family fun adventures. Really looking forward to it.
That's really awesome. Yeah, it's been a pretty exciting couple of weeks where we've been traveling. We've been at multiple different events. How have your travels been?
Oh, I'm just excited to be back. It's. I'm just excited for what's ahead. I think that's. I'm so energized by all of the community, the people, the conversations. How, yeah. What about you?
Couldn't agree more. I have been out of the house for the most part of the last month, and I honestly would not have been able to get through all of this had it not been for the community and all the conversations and all the excitement around FinOps and around cost optimization and efficiency. It just is incredibly energizing, like you said. So happy to be back home. Don't get me wrong,
Absolutely.
but it's been an incredible month. And of course, we have one more stop on our non-stop tour coming up, which I'm very, very excited about, which is at the end of July in New York.
Yes, that's going to be great. I'm sure as we get closer to that, we'll share some details. Looking forward to some fun streams from there. Still getting those, getting the details sorted, but really looking forward to that. The AWS Summit, New York.
Correct.
Well, let's jump into the announcement, or one of the announcements that we have. The telco DR can save us big bucks. Let's put this on the screen. Oop, not that one. I want to put in that one. So, tell us
Absolutely.
about this telco DR. We haven't talked much about telco DR. Who is telco DR?
Okay, so Daniel Royston, also known as Telco DR, is the evangelist of getting telcos into the cloud. Telco DR is also a portfolio of companies that include a bunch of different um, telecom-related software, and she's the pioneer of trying to get all of telco, which kind of are the telcos are right now the last of the um, big vendors or big organizations who are yet to adopt the cloud in a holistic manner. You still see some of the core operations be large scale on prem systems. And she's actually trying to get everyone over to AWS and other cloud providers. So I'm super excited about this new deal that we just signed with Telco DR that allows Telco DR to go to all of the different telco providers and offer CloudFix as a specially discounted service that they can leverage to get cost efficiencies. Now, a lot of the providers, lot of the large telcos have started moving to the cloud, and it's super exciting around what they're doing. At the same time, the sticker shock that everyone uh, everyone basically goes through while trying to scale up their cloud operations is something that the telcos are starting to face right now. So I'm hoping that this will really help us accelerate our mission of bringing cost efficiencies and savings to a large chunk of AWS customers, which are represented by the telcos.
And what are the unique challenges that telcos face? I imagine latency would be one of them.
Absolutely. I mean, telco software has its own quirks and nuances. Latency definitely is one of them. And, you know, as I was talking to DR, uh, some examples are, for example, every time you are just, I was trying to understand a little more about billing and charging. Every time you make a call or you're basically accessing data on your phones, the system basically has to call into a charging engine that checks to see whether you have enough balance to be able to access the next 10 bytes of data or 10 kilobytes of data, or be able to actually continue on a call that you're currently on.
So
So
and even checking your plan, right? So if you have an international plan and
exactly.
you have an international plan, is it metered? Is it unmetered? What's the charge? So they can add that to the bill and then make sure the whole
Exactly.
system is consistent.
And to imagine that this is happening for every single customer that's on their phones right now. And if you look at, I mean, one of the common things across the conference was to see the number of people who were buried in their phones as they were walking around. So if you just try to scale that across the planet, you can imagine the kind of scale and latency requirements you need so that that experience is as seamless as possible. It's quite mind-boggling, really.
Yeah, that's really, really neat. Well, and also as fellow content creators, we should mention she's got a Telco in 20 podcast. So
That's
if you're
absolutely
interested
right.
in the space, have a look at that. Oh, I also wanted to share here. This is from Reinvent 2022. So that's Jeff, you, DR, and me. So that was
Correct.
really fun. First time we all got to be in the same place.
That's absolutely right. And DR and I, however, go back 20 plus years from our days at Trilogy. And so I couldn't be more excited about this collaboration um, and this partnership.
Well, check out this article. I've put the link in the comments, and it talks about CloudFix. And also, I think what I really like about CloudFix is that it is generic in terms of it doesn't care whether it's a telco platform, a medical platform, an airline. We're looking at cost savings that are applicable to everybody, and that's
Correct.
the
As
level.
long as you're an AWS customer, CloudFix has value in cost efficiencies, that it can bring you. So yeah, we are completely vertical independent, but the partnership, what it helps us do is accelerate the the savings that we can get across the different verticals. So we'll be hoping to ink a few more verticals like that, but super excited about this one, and looking forward to see how it transforms the telecom business.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Well, I put that in the comments. I wanted to talk a little bit about FinOpsX. So we just got back from that. That was last Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And I wanted to,
Wow, it just feels like yesterday.
yeah. And I wanted to almost describe it the way we would do, almost like the way we describe an AWS article. So we give examples and maybe give it a rating. I think.
Yeah, I
FinOpsX. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
no. I agree. I think that's a good framework for rating the entire FinOpsX conference and the experience there.
Let's do it. So, in terms of description, it was Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and at least from my perspective, it almost had this the summer camp feeling. And I really liked that it was spread over a couple of days because when you saw someone, you knew, okay, I'll probably see them again. I want to continue that conversation. I'm on my way somewhere, but you can keep them in your mind and you'll see them in the future. It wasn't. It was really, really nice pace. You really got to know people over a couple of different interactions. Uh,
Right. I think one of my biggest takeaways from the conference was the fact that you were speaking to a fairly large audience of very, very like minded people, in the sense that everyone had the same mission, everyone had the same goals, and everyone was equally eager to learn and share their experiences with their peers. So that's the part that I think I loved the most. That every conversation we had was incredibly deep and focused, rather than being, like a lot of the larger events that we usually end up with. There's a very wide spectrum of experience and objectives in that audience. And so you kind of end up being all over the place. This was incredibly focused on everyone's experience around their journey in FinOps and cloud cost optimization. So I found it extremely, extremely useful. I learned a ton, and I had the opportunity to share all of our experiences as well.
Yeah, it was really neat being able to, yeah, like you said, have these really valuable conversations. They're really focused. One thing in terms of the physical part of it, so the keynote, the community is still small, and so we had one track for the keynote, and the keynote hall was big enough that everyone could go. And then what I
Right.
found really impressive at lunch, they moved the tables and chairs around, and you had lunch right in the keynote hall. I wanted to share a little clip of what that was like. Just into an auditorium. Huge shout out to the event staff over here at the Marriott in San Diego. They've done a great job at this FinOpsX conference. So so they literally
Absolutely.
during the breakout sessions, they would move the chairs to the side, put out these tables, and you could have lunch right with. So that we just continue these conversations. It was really seamless.
Yeah.
That was part of that
Kudos to the
community.
FinOps team for doing that. I think that the lunch, sitting at a table with 10 people with diverse backgrounds and having deep conversations on the same topic is something that's really rare. You don't come across this at different events. My table on day one was actually, I was so pumped about it. I actually went to JR and I told him about it. I told the rest of the FinOps team. It was an absolutely brilliant move. My table had two people in finance who had absolutely no technical background. Um, and then we had two newbies in the world of FinOps and in the world of, cloud. And then we had one other, vendor, so to speak. And then we had two other more experienced folks. And the conversations involved everybody. Everyone was bringing their perspectives. Everyone was bringing their questions. Everyone was bringing their learnings from their specific areas of expertise. And the conversations were probably some of the best that I've had in this space for a while. So, yeah, it was absolute genius. I
Yeah,
just hope that we could sustain this. Like that community feel is something that is really awesome. And I think it was also um, set right up front when JR walked up on stage and the screen said, "Welcome home."
150 different speakers
Um,
across the whole spectrum, range of maturity and content. We've got 100 level
yeah, that's the
content
one.
just getting started. We also lead
yeah.
heavily into more.
It was a really great way to set that stage, right? Because he said, "Okay, I've barely been to San Diego before, but then home
Right.
being this community where everyone's together, and
Correct.
like you said, there's institutions, there's banks, pharmaceuticals, airlines, there's people that have these mature FinOps practices that have I think, and hats off to them because it's almost like learning the hard way, right? They blaze the trail." But then a lot of the other attendees, like you said, they're the one person in their org who is pushing for FinOps, right?
Right.
They're the one person who's trying to tie this all together, and they wear a lot of hats within their org. And so this is for these attendees, they can have the conversations that they might not be able to facilitate as easily as that they're working on facilitating within their own company or organization. And I also met a lot
Yep.
of attendees from small government departments, like the local parks department or certain cities, small businesses, nonprofits. And one other detail I liked on these badges that they have on the back was the QR code for your LinkedIn. And so you'd meet someone and you kind of, it's funny because you got to stare at their chest level for a second just to get what their company is. And you'd say, "Oh yeah, you're from there," and you'd introduce yourself. And it was really great. And then it's made it really easy to connect on LinkedIn, again, facilitating that community because there was no awkward, yeah, search for this name. Oh, you spelled it wrong. I'm the fourth one down. Oh, yeah,
Right.
I had more hair back then. Whatever it is. It was really easy to just get the exact LinkedIn connection right there on the spot. And so I
No,
hope
I
other
absolutely agree.
conferences emulate that.
No, I agree. And I think it was all about the connections. At the end of the 3 days, I found myself, connecting and having multiple conversations with, a group of people I met on day one. And at every conversation, you talked about what are the new things you learned and, shared uh, shared these common experiences. And I had other participants at the conference who introduced me to other people over there, and like that is this, I think, the core theme of the thing, where everyone introduced themselves openly to others. The shyness that you see at conferences about just meeting up with random people kind of went away because it felt like community. It felt like you were part of it. And everyone so open-heartedly took the effort of introducing you to others, and at the same time it it almost felt natural for you to do the same. So I think kudos to the FinOps Foundation and everyone else. I know for a fact that they've worked incredibly hard over the last few months, and in fact last many months, to make this happen. And one of my biggest fears was whether we'd lose out that community feel. But I mean, having been through it, it was incredible. I think that community feel was absolutely retained, and the conference was an absolute success.
Well, we both know Joe Daly, director of community at FinOps Foundation. So let's have
Yep.
him on there. And now that he's after a well earned break, let's try and bring him on the podcast and see what he thinks about building community. I will. Let's reach out to him and see if we can make that happen.
Absolutely. I mean, they absolutely need the rest that they're taking this week. Joe, I think, lost his voice by the end of the conference as he was trying to, make up for the lack of mics in different at different venues. But absolutely, kudos to that entire team. They've done an absolutely brilliant job of doing this. Next year promises to be even bigger, and it's just a question of how do we retain all of that sense of community and connection as we grow dramatically year over year.
Absolutely. And so I guess the theme that I was thinking about, so this community was one of my huge takeaways. And the other one I thought about was convergence. So what I mean by that one is I think about the welcome home. FinOps is multidisciplinary. As I think about the people who are there, they're part programmer, part FinOps, part DevOps, part accounting. And it's a little bit of an esoteric mix that's typically siloed. And I really like it because convergence in the sense of you're getting all the people in the right room, everyone's speaking the same language. There's not cloud people on this side and finance people on this side, but it's about understanding, categorizing, and then finally optimizing your spend to help your organization to do more in the cloud. And so that's what it felt like. It had that convergence of all the right people and the critical mass, like almost like a star formation, right? You get these people started clumping together and achieving a fusion. So I really like that. That was
I think overall we are moving in the right direction of that kind of convergence. One of the pillars of FinOps is the concept of collaboration across different parts of the organization. And it is really key for making things happen. However, one of my learnings this time from FinOpsX has been the fact that we have left out other parts of the organizations or other roles in the organizations that actually play an important part in the successful execution or successful prioritization of FinOps in the org. Okay. For example, certain functions like the function of the CFO. Okay. Most CFOs drive the businesses via the P&L. And at the end of the day, what matters is the margins that you make, right? And you have very little control over revenue, and you have more control over things like the cost of goods sold or COGS. And CFOs tend to, drive margins by controlling more of the cost associated with, delivering outcomes. And that's where CFOs have just a direct directive to say, go fix this cost over here. Now, that's far from collaboration. That's far from, the core working model that FinOps tries to achieve. But that's the reality of how the world is. At the same time, engineers, to be very fair, and me coming from an engineering background myself, engineers are probably the worst people to be able to sell the idea of FinOps to different parts of the organization. And right now, if you really look at it, FinOps is largely driven by the engineering org, because at the end of the day, the execution falls on the engineers. And then we actually miss out on some of the best people to do the selling, which are the sales guys. They are probably most suited to articulate value and sell the idea of FinOps, even internally within the org. So I think there's a mix of more roles that needs to be brought in, especially at the leadership levels, into a conference like FinOpsX, so that they actually see what this is all about. And it doesn't remain siloed either within a function or at the lower levels. And you need more propagation across the org where it becomes a standard practice. Because it's an org-wide operation. It's not siloed in engineering alone.
Well, it'll be neat to see how it evolves, and the people who did go within their orgs, who are the only person who went, what they bring back, and then who gets roped in to go next year. So it will be interesting to look at the, I suppose, job titles distribution and how that changes over time.
Yeah. In fact, the FinOps Foundation had to, be more particular about who they let in. For example, they were very particular about who was allowed to attend the conference, and a large part of it was the engineers, or you had to literally be a practitioner within the FinOps role. So that, I think, will end up, becoming a little more loose as the collaboration function, starts expanding. So I'm looking forward to next year as well to see what new roles start showing up at the conference.
Absolutely. And I think my last observation, and then we can move on. I thought this is kind of a funny one, but it's like bringing order to chaos. And what I mean by that, okay, the cloud has been going super fast. It's not in its infancy anymore, but it's probably a brooding adolescent, and it's still it's mature in some aspects, but we're still doing things like adhering to standards, auditability, traceability, and really filling in all the stuff that's really important for enterprise. So, Rahul, you mentioned when you first started using the cloud, wasn't the whole company on a credit card, on one credit card?
Basically, it was one account and one credit card, and because there was no concept of users roles, none of that stuff. So yes, I think for a lot of us, and I speak to a lot of the other folks who've been around the cloud as long as I have, we've all ended up doing our thing around cost efficiency and cost management, and bringing all of that discipline. um, I think the struggle that we had was naming it something and being able to talk with the same language with your peers. And I think a lot of the work that the foundation has been doing is trying to create nomenclature that everyone understands, trying to create buckets of where you could categorize the work that you were already doing and put them, give it a name and put them in a particular space around a framework. Now, that doesn't mean that everything that FinOps Foundation said is the one way to do it. I think everyone has evolved their mechanism to do it, but it gives you a good framework to share experiences, to share learnings, to share um, you know certain ways of doing things
Oh, I mean, just like
against a framework.
every businesses use the same vocabulary, but they don't necessarily operate the same way.
Correct.
But
I
these are
think
the
right now
common.
you still have very, very different ways of operating the cloud functions broadly across different organizations, and it's been fascinating. I was talking to one of the large CSPs, non AWS CSPs, and they were talking about how internally their FinOps function, has existed pretty much for over a decade, but they were still struggling to put it in the FinOps framework because some of the key functions are different. For example, uh, there's one pillar that says you have to centralize FinOps and uh, or have a centralized team that's focused on FinOps. They have a very distributed way of thinking about it. So it's quite interesting. It I love the fact that there's a framework that gives us common nomenclature for things, and we can debate and talk about how different organizations have evolved, and hopefully in the future bring more alignment between the tools and systems that the CSPs have, the tools, mechanisms that the customers operate with, and the cost efficiency measures that ideally would just be automated at the end of the day without having to think too much about it. I think the parallel that I draw is to finance, where across the world we have something called the general accounting principles, right? The gap. It's a standard way that everyone uses for accounting, and it's well established. You have, chartered accountants who are qualified in making sure that they know how to look at finances and audit finances in exactly the same way, no matter where you are in the world. I, Hopefully, we'll get to that stage with cloud operations and cloud cost management in the not so distant future.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really neat to see all these ideas coming together, and we're still in the how do you say, there's still churn happening as it's evolution in progress, but
Yeah.
we're getting there quickly. Well, let's so our final review of the FinOps conference. How do you rate it on the cloud scale?
I would give it a 5 clouds easily. I think the experiences, the you know the sharing, the community, all of that was absolutely amazing.
And then I don't think I've even had to ask. This is going to be a simplifies. The whole point of FinOps is to simplify. We're speaking the same language. We've got all the right
Correct.
stakeholders involved. So nice work,
Absolutely,
FinOps
without a doubt.
Foundation. Five clouds and it simplifies. Doesn't get better than that. But we still want to see what's happening next year, and we're looking forward to even more traction and momentum and community building. So that's all we're looking forward to that, and we're not just looking forward to it, we're
Absolutely,
being part of it.
100%. We are going to be there next year at FinOpsX, so I'm looking forward to seeing what the next conference looks like.
All right. Well, should we dive in to some of the AWS announcements? Speaking about rating and reviews, let's jump into
Absolutely.
AWS. We've got one CloudFormation Guard. Let's have a look at CloudFormation Guard. I'll put this on the screen. CloudFormation Guard 3.0 with support for stateful rules. So CloudFormation Guard,
Yeah.
this is a way to scan your CloudFormation templates and then have customized rules that are in place that are set by your organization, right? So you can have
Correct.
CloudFormation Guard that's enforcing perhaps not having a static key built into a CloudFormation template. What other things would you use CloudFormation Guard for?
Yeah. So think of it. If you're familiar with AWS, it is not config. There's another one. There's another AWS service, and suddenly I'm blacking out on it.
SAM?
Not SAM. It basically ensures that you have only limited configurations. AWS Service Catalog is one of them. There's another analogous service, but some of these services restrict members of the organization from launching services or configurations in a random manner, right? They have a catalog that you're basically required to conform to. Extending that to CloudFormation scripts, which various dev teams deploy because they have different services that are going to be deployed in different configurations, and stitching those things together is relatively straightforward with CloudFormation scripts. So I love this service because it allows you to extend those set of rules over to CloudFormation scripts. So you can have rules that say you can only launch these specific instance types in these particular regions and so on. And it ensures that you can validate those CloudFormation scripts for adherence to those rules.
So this is some of in the release notes, and I love how this is public. You can look at rules for. So I guess you can save things in a regular expression. So in this case, it's a Redshift cluster. You can save that, and then you can check for a particular property of the Redshift cluster.
Correct.
I really like how there's a lot of examples here. It's showing you how you can use CloudFormation Guard to validate against different rule sets. So this is.
So 2 rule sets that I would love. I'm hoping that we can put one out next week. 2 rule sets that I'm actually really looking forward to putting out there publicly is the default. You should never have a GP2 volume that is launched in your CloudFormation script. So that should be a rule. And then another rule is that whenever you have S3 intelligent tiering, whenever you have an S3 bucket created, you should turn on S3 intelligent tiering for it by default.
Well, I was just looking at some of the highlights from our Meredith Holborn interview a while ago, and you asked her what are the 2 most important cost optimizations, and she said, well, aside from GP2 to GP3, it's S3 intelligent tiering. So those
Absolutely.
2 get you are pretty good big steps, and so being able to stop them. I mean, with CloudFix, we'll find them, we'll fix them, but being able to stop them at the source before they even exist that's great. No,
yeah, actually, that's the big struggle, right? A lot of the configuration changes exist in code, and to be able to fix it in code or detect it in code is incredibly valuable. So I'm very, very excited about this new announcement, and I think everyone should leverage it. We should start building out a library of these rules.
Absolutely. Well, how do we rate this one?
I would rate this has a bunch of examples that I went through. The GitHub repository is actually really neat. I would give this a solid 4.
Absolutely. And I'll put the article link in the comments here. So we're getting this 4 clouds, and definitely a simplifies anything that can protect you from yourself. Or just like we use compilers to protect you against accessing memory you shouldn't. Anything that can protect you from yourself, I think that's a win in my book. So I'm happy about that.
Completely agree.
All right, well, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking about DynamoDB, about AMD performance and EBS volumes, and a few more after that. All right, we'll be right back.
Public cloud costs going up and your AWS bill growing without the right cost controls? CloudFix saves you 10 to 20% on your AWS bill by focusing on AWS recommended fixes that are 100% safe with zero downtime and zero degradation in performance. The best part? With your approval, CloudFix finds and implements AWS fixes to help you run more efficiently. Visit cloudfix.com for a free savings assessment.
All right. Amazon DynamoDB now simplifies and lowers the cost of handling failed conditional writes. So I guess to jump in this one, what is a conditional write? So this is a write that depends on the state of an existing field. So if this is true, set this to false and turn this off. Is that what a conditional write is?
That's absolutely right. So it's completely state dependent, and what usually happens is that when you have a very large number of concurrent writes that are happening, you'll actually see a bunch of failures that start showing up, and you need a mechanism of um of handling that. And right now, you basically, whenever you get a response back, you have to see whether the return copy of came back or not. So actually, let me step back. So the earlier mechanism used to be, you used to do a conditional write, and then you had to check again to see whether the write actually happened or not. And this mechanism actually really simplifies that detection, because you now have a parameter, the return value on condition check failure, that is returned to you, so that you actually know whether something failed or not. And if it failed, then you can either decide to try attempting a write again, or putting it in a dead letter queue and then attempting it after some time. Whatever your measure is, you can actually do that at a later stage. Right now, when you doing multiple writes all at the same time, it was really hard to figure out whether something failed or not.
And I guess, so looking at this, so say if you're updating the state of a user and you write to the user, but that fails, and then so over here, DynamoDB message can include a copy of the item. So you get that user object back, and so you don't have to then query again, well, my write didn't work, so what's the state of things? So this, you get the object back, and so then you can eliminate one round trip from your logic of how you're going to handle that failure.
Correct. Because if it had been a failure, then you might have to go and look up some other place to figure out what was that request, and then either put that in a dead letter queue or put that in some other mechanism where you would have to retry it or take other alternative measures. Here, the calling function that's writing can make the decision around what it's supposed to do. And I think that's the big change that's very, very impactful.
Well, in terms of the article itself, I really like how simple it is, right? You add this one parameter. You don't have to go through a huge example because it's really straightforward. You update that one parameter. There's no cost associated with it. Correct. And all regions, it's already there, and all the ways you'd access it. That's really, and we have an internal AWS chat, and when this announcement came out, there was a little bit of a, oh, finally, this is great. So it was nice to see that. I
Correct.
think there's certain folks who are really appreciative of this, and I'm sure they're already going to be using it within the next couple
Yeah,
of days.
couldn't agree more. So yeah, I would give this a good 4-star, and definitely simplifies.
All right, full clouds and the simplifies. Awesome. All
Great.
right. Well, let's switch gears to R6A EBS. This one has been a long time coming, and we're excited about this one. So
Yeah,
R6A, the A in here is for AMD powered instances, and
correct.
we have a partnership with AMD. We often recommend that investigating switching to AMD based instances, and they offer a good price performance ratio. Maybe not as much as Graviton, but the advantage is that you don't have, it's not a different architecture. So it's the exact same
Correct.
architecture. So R6A, powered by AMD EPYC, one of the issues that we had with them is that they didn't have good enough EBS performance. And so under EBS sensitive, or I guess IO intensive workloads, we couldn't recommend that switch. But now with this announcement for EBS, it's equivalent to its Intel sized to its Intel counterparts.
That's absolutely right. So when you had so earlier in the year, we had this particular Nitro issue fixed for the C6A and the M6A, right? Those are the two, the compute optimized and memory optimized instances that were struggling to get the right EBS performance, even though at the processor level they were more performant than the C5s or the R5s or the M5s. The one that was left out here was the R series, or the ones that are typically used for databases. Now that that issue has been fixed at the Nitro level, this becomes a no-brainer. Moving from any of the R5s, R4s or R5s directly up to the R6A is just a no-brainer, because I think the cost difference between the R5 and the R6A is about 10%. And so you can start leveraging that cost benefit right away without any change in architecture. Both are x86 architectures. Anything that you're running on Intel should, for the most part, run identically on AMD. So with a little bit of a very small test window, you should be able to upgrade these in a pretty straightforward manner.
I really like this this sentence here. All new R6A instances starting today. We utilize this performance increase at no additional cost. And it reminded me of when we had Jeff Barr on the show just a few weeks ago, and we were talking about how when you're running on-prem, at best you can maintain the status quo, and that's kind of at best case. But you're not going to all of a sudden have, there was a performance increase with no effort.
Yeah, correct.
This is a performance increase that just happens.
I think the free upgrades, the two key takeaways from that conversation were, for me, that most people forget to account for these free upgrades that are incredibly valuable. And the second part that most people forget is that in the cloud, the modernization actually saves you money. Typically, when you're in an on-premise setup, every time you think, I need to modernize something, you think, it's going to cost me so much more money, right? But in the cloud, it actually saves you money to modernize. So, and unfortunately, as a discipline, most organizations don't have modernization as part of their regular engineering runbook. Just think, I've picked an instance type that works, let's just go with it. You also need to constantly keep up with the latest instance types, or what are the latest versions of the service, and you have to keep modernizing it, because when you do that, you get to leverage all the amazing new capabilities and stuff that come with it. But most importantly, it keeps getting cheaper. So unless you're doing that as a constant runbook, you're going to miss out on those efficiencies.
And I guess it comes down to that fixed cost, variable cost, where when you're in the cloud, your fixed cost is spread so far that you're only thinking about the variable cost. Whereas when you're purchasing as an individual, you have to think about how long does it take for the benefits to then outweigh
Right.
the capital outlay on this new hardware or the time to do this to make this new feature? Whereas in
Exactly.
the cloud, that's spread so thoroughly that you kind of just get the variable cost part of it.
Yeah. I mean, just another example, I'm just going to pull this up as we're talking about instances. We still see about 30 to 40% of the instances not being on the latest generation. In fact, not being in the top two generations. 30 to 40% of instances are still in the, C4R4, C4R4 M4, or the, C3R4, R3 and M3s. So there's still um, a lot of instances that are stuck in the older generations without having upgraded. And if you just upgraded those within the same instance family, just upgraded them to the latest generation, like move your C4s to a C6A, or move your, M3 to a M6A, you would probably save at least 20 to 30% on your AWS instance costs alone, and get significantly better performance at the same time for free.
And it's funny because it comes from this place of a perception of conservatism. I don't need the newest thing. I'm fine with the old.
Right.
But that's not. It's an opposite way of thinking here, where
Correct.
the fixed cost is gone. It's just the rate.
Exactly. And it's just the rate, and the rate is way cheaper. It actually gets cheaper as you upgrade instance families. The older ones actually cost more. So you're better off upgrading and modernizing your instance types pretty much right away.
Well, apparently there's a pretty big chunk of M1.small still running.
There is.
And they
There
migrated
actually
those
is.
all the way from the original hypervisor into Nitro. So
Correct.
it's
And they had to launch a special feature which would allow everything to run seamlessly on Nitro, because again, Amazon will support a particular instance type as long as there are customers on it. But it costs AWS even more to manage and maintain these incredibly old instance types. So they have I think, as Jeff described it, something like an emulator or a Nitro-based M1 instance that will allow you to kind of stay on the old version, but it just makes management a little easier for AWS.
I'm glad that they don't break backwards compatibility, but you should really stop using M1.
Correct. I would if someone is really stuck on M1, I would love to understand why. Like, I would love to have that conversation and learn. For the vast majority, I can't think of a reason why you'd still be stuck on M1.
Maybe they lost the SSH key and they don't want to shut it off. All right. How do we rate this one?
Yeah. This is definitely simplifies. Free performance improvement and cost efficiency is always going to be a simplifies, and gets a 4 as well.
All right. Nice work, Amazon and AMD. Hopefully this makes it easier to use those AMD instances.
Absolutely.
All right. Next one is CloudWatch dashboard variables. So CloudWatch dashboard variables, this makes it easier to save a particular parameter within a dashboard. So if you're trying to drill down, right, looking at a particular session ID or something like that, you can propagate that filter throughout the dashboard. Is that what this is doing?
That's exactly what it is. So you can basically do more optimal queries as you drill in or drill down, and it makes it much easier to carry context to these drill downs. And the variables are incredibly valuable. Otherwise, usually navigation in CloudWatch is suboptimal and takes up a lot of developer time. This just makes life much simpler, as you can just take the dashboards will allow you drill downs and will serve 90% of the use cases with this new additional feature.
And I'm sure, the old debugging, right, rather than open up a proper debugger, was printf debugging. And I'm sure we've all done the cloud equivalent of Lambda debugging with add a print statement to a Lambda, run it,
Correct.
and then jump into CloudWatch and look for it, which is probably not the best way to go about that. But if you were to do that, this is going to help you at least drill down so you can do this faster. So when you're looking for something particular in CloudWatch, this is exciting that you can use this. So all commercial.
Yeah, CloudWatch will log stuff, whether it's printf or whether it is, whether you actually use proper logging and use a logger to actually push stuff into CloudWatch. Either way, CloudWatch will do its thing, but just navigating through it and getting to exactly what you need is made way simpler with this new feature.
We use these CloudWatch dashboard variables. That will be, have a look at these, and it'll be exciting to see how much faster it can be to then navigate your CloudWatch logs.
Yep. Just jump into the documentation over here for 1 second. And I want to let the screen come up over there. Yeah. So they've actually got a tutorial, and I love the detail that's there in these examples, which you should go check out if you're trying to explore this. And yeah, I'd give this a solid 4, and it simplifies for the detail in here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what I'll try and do, let's do a Twitch stream where I might try and experiment with trying to learn more about this, because I do want to understand how to use this feature in my own usage of Lambda, because I do find that part to be a bit metric. So I think that'll be a lot of fun, just to do a casual Twitch stream, experimenting with this property, experimenting with this feature, and seeing how that goes.
Awesome.
All right, we've got one more, which is App Manager.
It's actually AppStream.
Sorry.
We're going to be talking about AppStream 2.0 today.
Manager, sorry. There's a lot of managers. Systems Manager, Change Manager. All right.
Correct.
Applications Manager for AppStream 2.0.
Yeah. So AppStream is actually one of those seldom used services, or I don't usually come across this very often, but I find it incredibly useful for SaaSifying, if that's a word, SaaSifying old school desktop-based Windows applications.
I think it is a word now.
Yeah, I think, and a classic, the one example that kind of shines for me is SolidWorks. If you're familiar with SolidWorks, it's a CAD software. Traditionally on the desktop required some pretty beefy solutions there. If you sign up for a trial with SolidWorks, it actually deploys an entire instance of SolidWorks for you in the backend and makes it available to you on your browser. So as a user, I never have to worry about downloading a big, massive binary, installing it, making sure that the license keys are all in place, and then working with it locally. All of that variability goes away, and a seamless browser experience is now available that allows you to play around with the old desktop-based SolidWorks, but now in your browser. And it's incredibly responsive. I was pleasantly surprised, even across I'm talking about latencies where I am in India and the deployment was somewhere in the US. The latencies were really, really small, and you could actually do CAD software with AppStream, which is pretty amazing. So if you have legacy Windows applications, you should really check out AppStream. It's really simple to get moving with these old legacy solutions and kind of SaaSifying them. You can, the biggest advantage is that you can upgrade your software without causing disruption to your customers. You will not have customers across 10 different versions of your product, which is usually the case. You can just update all of it at the back end, even if it is an old school Windows desktop product.
Well, and also you get to control the hardware, right? Because
correct,
for something like SolidWorks, the user experience, you don't want people using it on, I don't know, a Raspberry Pi and saying, oh, this is you did a terrible job with your software, it's so slow,
correct.
when really it's a hardware issue. But when you get to control the hardware, you can then control the experience, much like I guess the benefit of console games, right? We have a
Yes,
consistent hardware platform, and that way you can control the quality of the experience universally.
exactly. And so this is, this is something you should absolutely check out. And now you have App Manager within AppStream, which basically allows you to uh, basically share these application images across multiple AppStream fleets.
Awesome. Well, how do you? I like this 1 second increment billing. That's remember when
Yeah.
EC2 was an hour, and
Yeah.
you could go
It feels
to
like yesterday. It feels
uh,
like yesterday.
you hit 61 minutes. Oh, okay. Well, do I have anything else I need to do?
Exactly. One of our initial optimizations used to be to make sure that we never had jobs running for more than an hour, and we would try to optimize as much as we could within that hour when we were batching things together. So that is definitely one of the things that we look to do.
1 second, 1 second billing. That's great. So let's give this a rating. I think this would definitely a simplifies. I mean, the fact
Absolutely, this is definitely a simplifies, and I'd give it a 3.5, because I think they could have used this opportunity to push AppStream even further and make it absolutely clear where this is used. AppStream, like I said, is not a mainstream service that you hear very much of. So this would have been an opportunity to showcase some really easy examples.
yeah, and even to cite the one that you did, the SolidWorks, or say if you wanted to do, I think I remember I used no, it wasn't AppStream, it was Workspaces, because I had a license for TurboTax on Windows only, but I didn't have a Windows computer anymore.
Yeah. So this is a very easy way to have those made available to you. And I actually love AppStream as a service.
Awesome. All right. Well, we have one more to review. We have a quick visitor. Hold on 1 second. We are on the stream. Come on, say hello.
Happy 4th.
Hey, Jeff. Happy 4th of July.
Right
Oh,
Hey, happy 4th of July.
In the stream.
of course. I need to watch because I've been away for 2 weeks and have no idea what's happening.
Put the speakers on. There you go. Can you hear us
Great.
now? Oh, nope. Let me change.
Can you hear us now?
Let me change the StreamYard settings. There we go. All right. We're
here. Oh.
1 second. There we are. Okay. You should be able to hear us now.
All right.
Great. Happy 4th of July, Jeff.
Oh, thank you so much.
Oh, you're out of the camera.
Okay, let me get
Come
back in the
this
camera
way.
here.
There you go.
All right, I'll get back in the camera here.
And we have to hear about some anecdotes from Japan. How was Japan?
Today is the first day I have felt unjet lagged. It took a week to get unjet lagged from Japan.
I can quite imagine. I'm feeling that jet lag today. I just got back this morning.
Oh, that's good. That's fine. Oh, we had a great time. I didn't actually think about cloud for 2 weeks, which was kind of refreshing.
That's pretty awesome.
I'm looking at your list of things that we launched, and I'll have to catch up because I did my absolute best to not pay any attention to AWS World. It was really hard. It was really, really hard, but I did it.
Hey, well, if you've seen today's episode, you should be at least caught up on the top 5.
Excellent. Did you talk about App Fabric at all?
App Fabric. We haven't talked about App Fabric.
Ah, okay.
We had to bring that one up.
Saw a lot of excitement about that last week, and I did my best to not even click through.
Yeah, I'll put this on putting this on the screen, and here it is, App Fabric. Well, tell us about App Fabric.
I literally know nothing.
Okay.
I literally know nothing about it, other than that people are excited about it.
Well, let's have a look. App
this
Fabric
one is interesting.
Okay, natively connects top SaaS productivity and security applications to each other. Interesting.
Is there an easier way to stitch together all of these?
Let's see. So let's look at the getting started. Or features. Here we go. App Fabric connects SaaS applications, including Asana, Jira, Dropbox, Miro, Okta, Slack, Smartsheet, So this is almost like a
It's like SAM. It's like SAM, but for a bunch of third-party services, non-AWS stuff. A way to stitch things together.
let's look.
Looks like it.
Is there
There's got to be a blog post for it. I remember reviewing a draft of the blog post. I think Danilo wrote it, but I'm not sure.
We got to dive into this.
Let's have one more look here. App Fabric of AWS. Oh, here we go. Oh yeah, here it is. This is
Oh no, Donnie wrote that one. Okay.
Let's put this on screen.
Wait. Did I? Yeah, that's the one.
Here, let me
Yes.
move this way.
Yeah, I actually got to go to the parade. And see
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we'll catch up soon.
I've got to go see the parade. Stephen's kids are in the parade, but
We'll be there in a minute.
good to see you.
All right,
Good
why
to
don't
see
we
you,
add
Jeff.
this in the queue for next week and
We'll
call it
deep
an
dive
episode?
into this one for next week.
All right. Well, here we've got a little 4th of July
Oh,
thing.
awesome.
All right, ready? So we're gonna do a little 4th of July celebration here.
Okay.
On
So you're
three.
gonna do
All right,
the
yeah,
best.
1, 2, 3.
Wow.
All right. Cool.
All right. We'll see y'all later.
Awesome.
Bye.
Great.
All right.
All right.
Well, I can't think of a better way to wind up our 4th of July episode. So if you're in the U.S., happy 4th or wherever you are, and have a nice day, afternoon, evening. Thanks, and we will be next week. We've got a great episode with Maria Petrova of the AWS Skills Center.
Absolutely. Look forward to it. Thanks, everyone. Happy 4th
All
of
right.
July again.
See you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Is your AWS bill going up? CloudFix makes AWS cost savings easy and helps you with your cloud hygiene. Think of CloudFix as the Norton Utilities for AWS. AWS recommends hundreds of new fixes each year to help you run more efficiently and save money, but it's difficult to track all these recommendations and tedious to implement them. Stay on top of AWS recommended savings opportunities and continuously save 25% off your AWS bill. Visit cloudfix.com for a free savings assessment.